Terrell Owens is a Hall of Famer. What I always appreciate is I'm very outspoken, and if I criticize somebody, I always bring them on the show, and I say, come at me. And years ago, I don't have a problem with T.O. now, but years and years ago, he'd done stuff that drove me nuts. And when he came on the show, I said, come at me because I'm going to come at you. And he was great. And it was like, all right, I like this guy. We're fine. We're all good. LeVar Ball does that. LeVar Ball comes on the show. Some of the times I think he's out of his gourd. But I always tell LeVar, I'm going to come at you. Come at me. By the way, I told Baker Mayfield that. He was great. Baker was great. So Russell Westbrook hates me. Aaron Rodgers, they're always welcome on the show. Come at me. So T.O., all these years, comes on the show, doesn't always agree. But the one thing I think is funny is that he annoys people because he's a Hall of Famer and he says, all right, you're not going to put me on the first ballot. I'm not going to go there. And that drives people crazy. Part of that I like. Part of that little poking in the rib stuff I like. T.O. is now joining us live, the Hall of Famer. So people, first of all, people always say, T.O., you're going to get older and you're going to soften up and you're going to be just such a gentle soul when you're 60s and you're going to go, I want to go to the Hall of Fame and I want to do that. Is there even a smidge chance that as you soften as you get older, you're just going to go to the Hall of Fame and cry and say, I love you, kumbaya, and all that stuff? You ever going to go there?
Probably not. Probably not. As I've said, and I think you alluded to it, I'm my own person. I realize when it comes to the Hall of Fame and everything that it embodies, when you talk about really the motto, the criteria for guys to get in. 2016 was my first year up for the Hall of Fame, and I checked all the boxes. And so at that time, you think about the history of the game. You think about Jerry Rice, who's the greatest receiver to ever play the game, and I'm second, third, fourth, statistically behind him, and I don't get in. And as you just saw with the recent Hall of Fame induction, and I want to clear the air because I reached out to Calvin Johnson. I congratulated him on his induction. But if you think about the process and some of the guys that were on that ballot with him, most notably, you think about Torrey Holt, you think about Reggie Wayne. Those guys are worthy. You think about their statistics and what they did, not only for their organizations, but just the history of the game itself. Those guys are just as deserving as Calvin Johnson. And I'm not criticizing him. This is not to, negate his induction by any means or discredit him from getting in. But if you think about the process, for me, just like me, I checked all those boxes. And you think about those two guys that I mentioned, Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt. Both of those guys had Super Bowl rings. And that's part of some of the guys that vote these players in. That's part of the criteria for getting into the Hall of Fame. Calvin Johnson doesn't have any doesn't have any Super Bowl rings. Those two guys do. So, what is the actual formula for guys to be inducted?
Does it bother you because in 15 years you played, you made the playoffs more than half? Does it bother you when people say, "Hey, T.O. was talented, but he wasn't a good teammate. He didn't help the team. You actually had huge playoff games." Is that the part that's personal, that bothers you, that you somehow were great, but you weren't a good teammate?
Well, that's the narrative that guys like yourself, Skip Bayless, and some of the former football players that have gone on to be a part of the media, that's the narrative that has been out there for a number of years. And so as it related to me and my Hall of Fame induction, I got sick and tired of people really categorizing me as you just mentioned, a bad teammate, being selfish, being arrogant. There's a number of guys that have played this game that have done far more things, egregious or negative in a negative light than I have. But for whatever reason, that's the image that the media portrayed throughout the course of. But you can't say that I don't embody what people consider a great teammate. When you think about some of the teammates that I played with, none of my teammates have actually supported some of the media's narrative that I was actually a poor teammate.
When you, in the NFL, it's always been understood that, like the NBA, the stars are the league. In the NFL, you never had, even quarterbacks weren't very outspoken. Quarterbacks are like, part of the organization. And now you have quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers is outspoken. Deshaun Watson's like, get me out of here. Do you side with like a Deshaun Watson, for instance, that says this organization's awful? I'm done carrying it. You guys don't support me. I'm out of here. Do you support that?
Absolutely. When you think about really where the NFL stands in terms of, in comparison to what Major League Baseball and the National Basketball Association, how those guys, those players with those two entities, how they unify. And they basically, they unify, they get together, they understand their worth. And I think players are now starting to realize they have a lot of leverage. If you think about the makeup of the National Football League, it's 70 plus percent black and brown. And I think that's what's missing is that the fact that guys are not able to really take their careers and matters into their own hands. But as it relates to Deshaun Watson, this situation, it was bound to happen. There are things that has been swirling around that organization, even from obviously the departure of his number one receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. You saw a guy in Andre Johnson that never gets on social media come out and basically kind of share his sentiments about what's going on. You saw before the passing of their owner, the racial insensitive remarks that he made. So there's something brewing down that has been brewing in that organization that Deshaun Watson wants to actually get away from.
Yeah, by the way, the Andre Johnson point is well stated because Andre Johnson's one of the classiest guys, never said anything about anybody. When he comes out,
right.
when he comes out and says stuff, you got issues inside the house of the Houston Texans. Now, we had Darius Leonard on yesterday, who is just an unbelievable football player, went to a tiny school. Clemson didn't want him, and South Carolina didn't want him, so he went to South Carolina State, walks into the NFL, leads the NFL in tackles as a rookie. You went, if I can recall, Chattanooga. You went to a small school, and you walked into the NFL, and immediately it was like, okay, this guy is obviously a great player. We always hear about quarterbacks playing with a chip on their shoulder. T.O., did you play with a chip on your shoulder knowing, even in college, you didn't get the respect of getting like a big scholarship? Did you always have that chip?
Not at all, because I knew coming out of high school, going to UT Chattanooga, I wasn't a 4 or 5-star recruit. Even when I got drafted, third round, 89 pick. You think about the receivers that went in that draft. I wasn't really highly touted to be, as talented as a number of those guys. When you think about Nassim Muhammad, Eddie Kennison, Keyshawn Johnson, these are guys, Mercury Hayes, Derek Mays. These are guys that played at bigger universities than I did. Honestly, bro, I never thought I would play beyond the collegiate level. I really developed a passion for the game of football. I developed a passion to play the receiver position. And I think I'm very unique in a number of ways. I was just an ordinary kid that was able to kind of, like I said, develop a passion for the sport that ultimately did some extraordinary things on the football field. So I never had a chip. The chip, and motivation that I had was when I felt like I was being discredited, or I felt like, management or coaches or what have you, that basically tried to strip me of my voice and really kind of strip me of who, and the essence of who I was and who a lady and my grandmother raised to be a strong black man.
I appreciate that. So I see this thing. You're partnering with the Lasorda family. Tommy, of course, passed here in the last year. You've got a wine label 81. Now, you're one of those guys, you've never even had a candy bar in your life. You have like abs. You're going to have abs when you're 80. So So do you drink, wine's actually supposed to be healthy for you. You know that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a wine a day. Yeah, helps.
So you drink your wine?
I do. I mean, I definitely have to support, the product that I'm endorsing. And honestly, you mentioned Mr. Tommy Lasorda, God rest his soul. The week that he passed, I was supposed to fly out to L.A. to do some marketing and things for the wine, and he ultimately passed right before I got to L.A. And so I just really want to thank his family for honestly just giving me the blessings to be able to come up with it, to be a part of this partnership and this branding of 81. And as you said, I never really drank a lot when I was when I played in the National Football League. That was part of my health reason as far as me optimizing my performance. Alcohol will dehydrate you. So I knew in order to be the best athlete that I could be, I had to eliminate some of the alcohol. But over the last couple of years, I've dibbled and dabbled with wine. Obviously, this partnership came, organically through a mutual family friend and my marketing agent, Max Management. And so they asked me, would I like to partner with Mr. Tommy Lasorda? And when you think about a Los Angeles legend, obviously a Hall of Famer like I am, so Los Angeles Dodgers, them, winning their championship last year. This was probably the best time, the most inopportune time that I could have be a part of something like this.
He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Here's a great trivia question, by the way. I would have never guessed this. This is a great trivia question. You can win money. T.O. is the only player in NFL history to score a touchdown against all 32 NFL teams. I wouldn't have guessed that in 100 tries. I cannot believe Larry Fitzgerald. I seriously, he's played for decades. So among your other things, third most receiving yards in NFL history, third most receiving touchdowns in NFL history. T.O., I like having you on. You've grown up. You're good. You got your act together, your life together. You seem happy. You seem successful, and good for you. I'm happy for you.
I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm just like my wine. I'm aging like fine wine, man.
I appreciate it.
Are you a wine drinker?
I am. Yes, I am. Well, let me just say, I'm not going to get into I own a couple wine stores in Connecticut. I sell it more than I drink it, but I always appreciate it. Wine is good for the soul.
Okay,
yes.
Absolutely. Well, you'll definitely appreciate 81. It's if you have a taste for plum preserves, any you have a palate for a ripe black cherry, spicy toasted oak. This is 81 is the wine for you, and it's a cab blend, so it's 95% cab and 5% Syrah.
That's a good. We eat that with a steak. Drink that with a steak right there. That rich cab Syrah stuff, good hearty steak. Syrah, very good stuff.
You don't have to pitch me on wine ever.
I know you drink it all the time. T.O., thank you very much for stopping by.